businessman, I call him a villain.
No, he forgave some debt.
Doing this, maybe he's collecting debts that are on the collectible or whatever, but he's doing all of this for one purpose, to benefit himself.
Amen.
And that's where dishonesty comes in. Because, you know, it's like stealing money for potential purposes, stealing money from the man.
Okay.
His plan for the future use the somebody business. But with the method they do, you know, they break the law, and we don't know if that money was already interest or whatever they owe to the. But the point is, though, you plan for your future, his future by somebody else's money, you know.
Following best
He's
financial
doing it for
practices.
him, not for the good of the business.
Yeah,
But-
Jim
but
said
what's
that
his
too, right?
role?
He's doing it for his own benefit.
To represent the business.
Well, Joe, you added onto that the idea that
You know, of course it was for him, but you know, he was planned for his future. So he was. That's his screwedness, but you know, I use my master money to play for me in the future because I'm gonna get fired. So that's they commended the dishonesty because he was more screwed than the sons of light. You know, more. And today that's the reality. You know, the people over the world, they are more clever to deal with the business than people of church. That's a great example. Even it was dancing, but show how his craftiness to deal with the plan for it.
Yeah, go ahead,
He's really justifying the flesh, is what he's doing.
he's justifying the flesh. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
justifying the flesh.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm calling him a hero.
No,
This is
yeah.
my way of getting through the scripture.
Yeah, I think there's,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, it's a tough one, no, for sure, yeah.
He's a villain, but he's not trying to satisfy God. It's for the flesh.
So he's trying to satisfy the flesh, he's doing it for himself, he's cooking the books, he's
But,
not
but,
being honest.
but his role is he's the manager on behalf of the owner of the asset.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Well, yeah,
he's managing on his.
Jason, said, there's a note there. His master, the Lord, perhaps indicates the reference by Luke to Jesus. So it doesn't make it any clearer for me.
Yeah. I hope we're gonna get there. All right, so Lyndon's given us some reasons, maybe that we could admire this guy. He could be a good example. Anybody else want to make a case that he's
Well, why didn't he fall on his knees
and ask for
and
repentance?
beg for mercy? Why did he not do that?
All right.
No, shut
Well, I
up.
think if you look at either fired them and we didn't make it public because of embarrassment, or they ended up in jail. I can give you examples if you like.
All right, so we got a couple reasons why he's a villain, maybe a couple of reasons why he might be admired. Anybody else want to comment on either side, villain or hero?
The next two verses basically shows that Jesus was giving them a hard time. It said the Pharisees who loved money heard this and were sneering at Jesus. He said to them, "You are the ones who just..."
Trusting them to like have spent enough time with him eventually to kind of work this stuff out. Okay, so we've got some good reasons why we might see him as a hero, some reasons why we might see him as a villain. Let's now flip it a little bit, right? This little pedagogy for you here. For those who said he is a villain, what's the problem with that reading? Setting up the unjust steward or the dishonest manager, what are some potential problems with seeing him as a bad example, as a villain whom Jesus is using as like a negative example, right? What are some potential problems with that? There's at least two glaring ones.
Well, that he's using the rich man's money to
villain, or him as a villain here, is if you kind of made Jesus set this up as like a moral teaching, right? Don't act like this. And y'all just read what parable last week? Prodigal son, right? What was before that? Lost sheep, lost coin, right? What have been the last 7 chapters of Luke been? We talked about this when I was with you last time.
Lost and found.
They're all parables of grace, right? So why would Jesus suddenly, after being, this extended teaching about grace for 7 chapters, all of a sudden say, but I need to give you one really kind of strict moral teaching, right? So that's the problem with the villain scenario, right? What's the problem with reading this as a good example, as a hero?
You shouldn't follow suit. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I say don't try this at the office.
It wasn't sacrificial, it was self-serving, he was fun.
I mean, I think probably actually the trickiest thing, just even in terms of like the interpretation of the text, is what do you do with verses 10 through 13? Right? Let me ask you all this. Those of y'all who have versions of the Bible, you may or may not have headings, right? Where does where does your Bible break up the text?
1 through 14 is called the parable of the shrewd man.
Yours is, through the 14.
Then
right?
it goes
Most people
into
have
it.
split up through 13 and 14. Right? So read verses 10 through 14. Somebody want to read those?
Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So have you not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you've not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. The Pharisees who loved money heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. He said to them, "You are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. What people value highly is detestable in God's sight."
So on some level, I guess what I'm saying is this feels like an interesting, if you take these verses to be a interpretation of verses 1 through 9, it feels like it leans toward the villain reading, right? But then this is why, again, this commentator that I really like says this is the hardest parable to interpret in the scriptures. It doesn't seem to comport with the moral that Jesus gives it himself in verse 8, right? So part of what I'm asking here is, where does the parable actually end? Right? And for the sake of just making this a little bit more simple, I'm going to suggest that it actually probably ends in verse 9. And then what you have in verses 10 and following is a series of sayings that Jesus gives that may be extrapolating on the parable and may not. Right? One really good example of this is verse 13, right? Is in Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount. Right? So it may or may not actually be directly related to this parable. We don't know.
Well, when they took him to an eternal dwelling, I mean, I would think that would be hell. I know, but that's the way I'm looking at it. Just because say, well, either you're going to be eternally, in hell or eternally with the Lord. If you do something wrong, you're not going to wind up in the kingdom of God. So, but that's my view.
So I'm going to suggest that maybe we look at the parable as being about those verses 1 through 9, as opposed to like those later verses being interpretations of that. That complicates things a little bit, and it's not an easy, clean interpretation. I'm just offering this tension up there for us to see it a little bit. But in that case, it makes verses 8 and 9, the ones that I read and David Williams read, more like the conclusion and the sort of like moral of the story, right? So let's look at those again. He says, "And his master commended the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, he may welcome you into eternal homes." Okay, so let's say those are the 9 verses we're dealing with. Let's ask one more question before we start really interpreting it. We sort of imagine some things, right? But based on the text itself, right, is there any clear indication what the unjust steward thought the master would think of his actions?
Didn't seem to be any forethought of the master. He was taking care of number one, and the master just seemed to like it, but I don't think there was any forethought.
Yeah, he's mostly talking about himself, where he's like, I'm trying to protect myself from when.
Well, the servant must have a shrewd master, and this is the way his master does things. So how will he possibly condemn the servant if he does exactly the same thing? But let's throw that out.
Well, what's he mean here when he says, for the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light? So he's talking about dealing with believers. So this manager thought he was doing this from a godly perspective rather than from a human perspective. Was he trying to deal with them like a last way of saying thank you doing business for me or with me on my way out the door? Or
I think the answer to your question would be helped when we, and I want to get to that in a second, we start trying to see who's who in this parable, right? Who the master is, who the steward is, and who the debtors are, right? But let's get to that in a second. Hold on to your question.
okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't the master make an assumption that the manager is in fact doing something wrong with the account?
Yeah,
He's
I mean,
hearing
Yeah.
rumors, he doesn't, there's no court investigation of documents.
right. I mean, speaking of like proper like bank protocol, like you get an anonymous tip from somebody, right? What's an anonymous tip?
Jim Miller calling on the telephone.
5 people's bank
Yeah.
stock now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's interesting, right? Like, we have this picture of a master who's so concerned about the books that he just gets a hint that this guy could be doing something wrong. We don't know that he's done anything wrong, right? Before the sort of like dealing that he does in the text, we'll get back to that. But, that he is ready to fire his number 2 guy, right? His right-hand man. It's like, that's it. Books are messed up. You're out.
I think we have to keep in mind too that he's probably an absentee landlord.
Mm-hmm.
He's somewhere else. He doesn't see the books.
Right.
Only the manager knows what's in the books. He's been in the book. It says, I heard. He didn't self-examine. He picked up that something nefarious going on. So he's called this guy into account. The unjust steward has not repented at all. He assumes he's toast, he's going to get fired, so he's doing everything he can to make a future for himself. And so I think the landlord isn't necessarily note in detail what's happened, but figures something's been wrong, and so he's called him to account. So I think it's helpful to keep in mind that he's just going by what he has heard, and so it's not a trial.
So he gets accused, he doesn't deny it, and then goes out and does something against the books.
Well, I mean, one of the things.
Well, right? I
maybe,
mean,
maybe you could ask yourself this, right? I mean, to Dan's point, like the master doesn't know, right? So maybe he's thinking, hey, if I can just bring in a bunch of income, right? Maybe the master's gonna be happy, right? What about the debtors? Like, are they gonna be happy with this guy? He sort of presumes they are, but do we find out?
He's a hero.
Okay, I mean, there is the obvious way of seeing it, right? And I think that is true, right? They are gonna be happy with their debts being cut, right? But is there some way that they might be a little bit rankled at him?
Yeah, now they may feel that they owe him in another way.
They may owe him.
Well, there's 2 ways to react to that. Either you say, no, that's dishonest, I'm not gonna go along with your plan, or absolutely, and that kind of is judgment on the debtor, right, which choice he makes.
or you could look at it as when your butt was on the line, you did something about it. And when I came to you and said I was gonna be late, you said, I gotta pay you on time and I want my money.
Yeah, so maybe there's some sort of other obligation being built up. What else is happening to these debtors though? I mean, what's the result of him coming to them and cutting their debt? They're benefiting, kinda, right? But what's actually happening? They're definitely benefiting, yes. And what else?
They're obligated to him now.
Well, they're paying more than they were a minute ago, right? All of a sudden, they're like, maybe if you know, they may be happy they did not pay this, but up to this point, they were actually just not paying, right? So there might have been some like, you know, we don't want to like overly valorize these debtors. Remember, like they may be also unjust or dishonest in some sense, and they're somehow like dodging their debts, right? So now all of a sudden he's created a condition where like, they're like, all right, this guy's just as dishonest as me, you know. And, I guess I got to do something here to kind of like start answering debts. I can't say no to the deal, right? I could have said no to the full amount, but now I'm getting a deal. Okay, so he's actually cajoled these people who might not have been paying anything anyways, in order to pay something they wouldn't have paid before.
It's sort of like going to the IRS and you own 15 grand, they cut it down to 5. You're happy, you're gonna pay them.
Yeah, but we don't know that they have not been paying their bills. It just says, this is what they owe.
Right.
They-
Right.
It was a tie up, the land was leased, and so they were farming on the master's property, and therefore a portion of their income had to go to the master. And so all he's doing is they're saying, I'm reducing what you owe this guy, but he's not wiping their debts away, and now suddenly said, look, you gotta come up with 800 bushels of barrel tomorrow. He just said, like, he's reducing their monthly, or whatever their payment.
Yeah.
This makes me feel that, I mean, are they sure that the master is not gonna come after him for the remainder of the day?
Yeah.
You know, or it could be really disingenuous. Well, gee, why do I have to pay you 50 bushels? 25.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's a good moment to interject yet another important biblical interpretive principle when you're reading parables.
Here we go.
Is that these aren't allegories, right? So you could overread into parables and try to like say everything means something. And the kind of exercise I'm taking us through right now, we're going through this slowly. You might be tempted to do that.
This
Right?
is a trap.
No, I'm trying to avoid that, right?
Yes.
But like the big sort of, you know, yeah, we don't know for sure. And I did suggest that, so it's good to sort of check there to say that we don't know for sure that they weren't paying their debts, but we do know at the very least that they still were in debt. Okay. So, okay. Lastly, let me ask you: does this remind you of any other parables? I can think of at least 3. One really, one maybe it's harder to see. One kind of, only if you read it the same way I do. But there's one I think it's very obviously should remind us. Go ahead, Jim.
There's one parable where a debtor comes in and pleads with his master, and so the master forgives him, and then he goes out, and one of his debtors, right, can pay him, and he really treats him harshly. After being, rather than being grateful about what just happened to him, to pass it on to the next person. If that's my thought.
Prodigal son.
Why the prodigal son?
Because when he returned, the father essentially forgave him, I want to say, of personal sins for the family, of wasting a share of the wealth and so on, and accepting him back as a son. I don't think under the, as I understand, the Jewish custom at the time, he would have necessarily got his 1/3 share back again of whatever was left. I think that was done and finished. But he wasn't cast off from the family.
So I think it's really good connect. And I mean, there's a few reasons why we should immediately think of the prodigal son when we read this parable. Maybe the first one's too obvious even to think of, right? But what's one really obvious reason?
2 pages before.
It's the It's the very last parable. We just heard the parable, right? So Jesus tells the parable of the prodigal son, and then he tells his parable, right? So this is the one that leads into the parable of the steward, right?
But the difference here, Nate, is that prodigal son repented. I don't see where the shrewd manager repented for his sins.
Well, it isn't, yeah, right, so it's not exactly the same. But there's one other reason why we should see it as a connection to the prodigal son. If you look at verse 1, right? So he's just told the parable of the prodigal son, and then he says this in verse 1, right? There's a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property, right? You know where we heard that exact phrase, which in the Greek is the exact same term. Good. Okay. What other parable does this remind you of?
One like James, that she was. So Peter asked a question to the Lord: how many times am I gonna forgive my brother? At least 7 times. And Jesus, no, we gotta like 7 times less than. So he gave a story of.
The laborers in the vineyard?
No, it's not that one. That's in 20. He gave a story. Jesus, no. I mean, all 300 talents, talents.
Yes, the unforgiving servant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so we can pay, he gotta sell his family to be sell to pay that. And he begged, to the master, he begged when the master forgave. In the other hand, they have a servant who will ter 100 denarii, and denarii was a day wage, so we don't forgive him because and the point is to forgive him, and not because the money Jesus used as a figure of speech. And to forgive the debt. The debts is the sinners like against God and sinners against each other. And so I think that's a little bit.
I think, yeah. Can we actually go?
It's just, are you afraid of reading it?
Yeah.
Well, so I think let's do this first. I want to go to this. There's another one that I think only makes sense if you kind of take my reading. But like, I think this one is more obvious, right? The one that Joe just mentioned. So. Someone want to read Matthew 18, 23 through 35. It's the parable of the unforgiving servant, right? So we just read again tonight the parable about the unjust steward. Right? Let's see if we can make some connections between this one, because I think the unforgiving servant's one that we interpret more easily and quickly. But I think it actually is a good cipher for what we're reading in the unjust steward. Does somebody want to read Matthew 18, 23 to 35?
Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. The servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay back what you owe, he demanded. His fellow servant fell on his knees and begged him, be patient with me, and I will pay you back. But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said, I canceled all of your debts because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had mercy on you? In anger, the master turned him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you, unless you forgive your brother from your heart.
All right, so same question I opened this with. Who's the hero in that story? Initially, at least, right? Like, and who's the villain? Maybe we'll start there. Who's the villain in that story? The unforgiving servant.
First servant.
The servant was forgiven all that amount of money, and forgive a guy who owed him another denarii. Because he should be forgiven too. He was forgiven back. He should not forgive for that.
This is what Jesus told us in the prayer he gave his disciples.
Yeah. Forgive as you've been forgiven, right? So in that story, the guy, I'm going to try to draw some parallels, because I think this story of the unjust steward, or the dishonest manager, however you want to call him, is basically an inversion of this parable, right? It uses the same device, the same sort of like narrative device, but it reverses it to make the same point. Right? So you have the same kind of thing happening, right? There's a debt owed, the debt's canceled, right? In unforgiving servant, it's the master who forgives his servant, right? His agent, whoever, the guy who's handling his books, right? He forgives him of the debt. He cancels his debt, right? In the unjust steward, it's the steward who's canceling somebody else's debts, right? In both cases, the guy who's kind of like initially in the wrong, right? Or sort of like who's kind of put as this sort of like narrative kind of like contrast, right, to the point of the parable, is the one who's being like really litigious about the books, right? The unforgiving servant's like, you owe me money. I'm not going to cancel your debt, right? And the unjust steward, it's the master who says, you've been messing with my money. You're fired. Does that make sense? You guys kept track of that? Right? And so, and actually, we know it really clearly, right? It's the canceling of the debts. When we read that forgiving servant, we're immediately like, oh, the canceling of the debts, that's good. Okay? We're glad, because we put ourselves in the position of the servant who's been forgiven. And, you know, one of the things I love about that passage, hopefully you all know this, the amounts there are kind of like ridiculous, right? Like, what's the amount for the unforgiving servant's forgiven?
10,000.
10,000 bags of gold, it says in here.
No, what do you 10,000 talents, right? You all know what a talent is? It's a year's salary, right? So we're talking, it's like, if y'all have ever seen Austin Powers, right? You know, when Dr. was like $100 billion, right? It's like Jesus like trying to make a really ridiculous point, right? He was like, $100 billion, this one unforgiven servant, she's like, I don't know, $100 billion, right? And then what's the other servant that the guy doesn't forgive? What's the other one? 100 denarii, which is a day's wage, right? So it's like $100 billion or
3
like,
months of work. So
yeah.
the point, you know, you can pay back our debt to God, and if God forgive all our debts, He must forgive the others. That's the point. That is very obvious. Really, is a reversal of this parable, because God is one now. One he forgave, but the other one is the steward. So it's the other way around.
Vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
The footnote in the Bible I have is that today you could compare the 10,000 talents to $1 million. You could compare the 100 denarii to just a few dollars. That would show the huge on one side and so minor.
So yeah, exactly. It's like a ridiculous amount versus like very little money, right? Now it's not quite as obvious what's happening here, but one of the things I'm going to suggest about that first parable or the parable that we just read, the unforgiving servant, is it's consistent with the theme that we've just been seeing throughout the last few chapters, right? That grace is really only available to those who see just how completely lost they are. Right? This was, if y'all were in church a few weeks ago, the point that I made about that. The guy who knocks at midnight versus the guy who's keeping all the money in his storehouses, right? It's the person who really sees themselves as completely lost, right? Who's not trying to secure their own lives through success, but actually admits that they're at the end of the rope, they've got nothing to offer, and that grace is actually available to them. I think this is sort of like an inversion of that. Let me try to show this by asking you now, finally, who's who in this parable? Yeah, just
Green is the two scramble.
We'll give you yeah, we've inverted the inversion. Right? So,
Which parable?
the one we read, Luke 16, the unjust steward. Right? Let's start with the master. Who do we think the master is?
Jesus.
If you read Jesus in this, then I think it's even more complicated.
Yes, I say it's okay to stick it to him.
You don't need the money?
Excuse me.
Anybody want to guess who the master is? I don't think it's Jesus.
God.
God. Why do you think it's God?
course, this evolved, this whole scenario is about God. I mean, and the only reason you mentioned about comparison, I don't even know if this is a parable, but when Jesus was at the table and Judas was complaining to Martha and Mary for the very, very expensive oil using. And he criticized, and he said, you could feeding the poor and not enough. But yet he says, you know, you'll always have the poor, but you'll not have the. That's, man, that's my brain's interpreting part of this.
Could it be possibly the master of the Pharisees? Because in the last, verse 14, he says, the Pharisees who love money heard this, and they're all sneering. And he said, you are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of men, but God knows your hearts. So when he said to when he commended the manager, he's justifying the sin that the manager did.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I think you can maybe read it as the Pharisees if we didn't have the moral at the end, right? So it's somehow at the end, everybody's happy, right? The master's happy, the manager and the debtors are happy because their forgiveness is, their debts have been forgiven, right? So I like where Bill said this is made. Let's think about this as God, right? The master is God. Right? There's also that kind of principle that he has the land, right, on which everyone lives, and to him, to whom, everyone owes a debt because of that. Right? Then who are the debtors? Us? Yeah.
Sinners.
Yeah.
Generic.
Which is most of us here, right? We've got at least a few sinners. Right? So then let me ask you this. Who is the dishonest manager?
I'm gonna go on a limb and say it's Satan.
Yeah.
Well, then why is the parable praising him?
What's that?
Why is the parable praising him? If it's not, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I just.
God.
Let's look at the parable again now, given some of the things we've just seen, right? The dishonest manager is somebody who loses his position, but uses that moment to rescue others by forgiving their debts and gaining friends through that grace. Right?
That's something Jesus did.
Yeah, but I would reverse that. I think he did it for himself first and was hoping for favors later on. To me, he's doing this for his own benefit. And if it's God, that really worries me because he's thinking it's okay to cheat God to benefit himself.
Who, Jesus?
Whoever you want to say. That's why I say if you're calling the master God, well, now I'm even worse about it because now the manager is trying to take advantage of God and cheat God out of something for his own benefit.
No, he's not. The manager is trying to save souls. And if you go directly to the crucifixion, in the time that Jesus has been out and preaching, he's saved some souls, but then he saves the rest of them when they realize what's occurred through the time that's taken after crucifixion and resurrection, then to Pentecost, to get the word out to save the souls of the rest of the population.
Right. And he's been a manager forever. And he wasn't worried about saving their souls before. Now his butt's on the line and he's going to worry about saving their souls?
God was trying to work with the Jews and the Hebrew faith, and it didn't work. So that's why he had to introduce the manager to come up with a new system.
Doesn't it tell us more about us and our view of money in this parable than it does the opposite? God doesn't measure his wealth. He uses wealth to measure our dependence or our love of wealth. take the money out of it like it's a value and see God using that and allowing us as human beings to manipulate it. But we put the value on the money, right? That's why we're so angry at the manager, because he's cheating. But take the value out of the money and it's more of a test.
The money isn't so much for me, it's about being honorable and doing the right thing. I might have said, okay, I'm gonna call the master and just run this by him first. And if he's good with it, let's do it. But I don't know that after just being accused of cooking the books, that the first thing I do is go out and cook the books and then say I'm doing it to save souls.
But Jeff, keep in mind, he's not commending the master or the steward's general behavior. What he's commending, or his character, what he's commending is the means he took to achieve, his future well-being. And he's taking that principle and applying it to us. So he's not talking about, justifying one way or another. If you back off of the steward, his lifestyle, character, and values, then it's something that he demonstrated.
So it's okay for the manager to worry about his future.
Well, so here, let me.
I mean, that's like saying a
Again,
bank teller
I
can
think-
take home $20 every day
I said
because they're
before,
worried about the
Let
future.
me interject here. I did it before we get in trouble by overreading too many of the details, like overextending the metaphor, right? But again, loses the position in order to be rescued with others. By the way, accused of being a criminal, right? Anybody else we know, crucified amongst other criminals, right? Forgiving their debts makes friends through grace, right? I got one other person in the story I want you to ask, because Jeff, you're doing it right now, right? Hold on, Jim. Yeah. We got one other person people in the story, right? It's the people who get mad because of what Jesus does. Who are the people who get mad? We get to this point where so basically, the one other question, right? Like, who's the one who cooks the books on our behalf as the debtor? Jesus, right? And who gets mad because Jesus is talking about cooking the books? Remember who Jesus is hanging out with? Who did he make friends with when he was
Right.
crooks, right? The sinners, right? The people that for a million years might not have ever been seen as respectable, right? Jesus goes out and he hangs out with them and he makes friends with them and he forgives their debts, right? And brings them into, reconciles them to God.
It's all about judgment. That's what this whole thing's about. It's about judgment.
What I'm trying to suggest is that and maybe this is not the right reading, right? But if I suggest to you that Jesus is the unjust steward, some part of us is going, no. Right? And that may be exactly what Jesus was trying to do. If you notice from the Pharisees' reaction, they're also going, no. But maybe that's the exact reversal. This is maybe not just an accidental moralistic parable in the midst of all the grace-oriented parables Jesus been giving. Maybe he's actually just reached this sort of like fever pitch, and turning upside down the expectations of the Pharisees, right? And isn't it the case? Like, don't we feel lucky that if it's the case that Jesus is an unjust manager, aren't we glad that we have an unjust manager? Don't we feel lucky that we have a dishonest manager? Don't we feel lucky that we have an unjust? I do. I mean, the Pharisees did it. Right? And isn't this in some ways the crucible that Jesus is laying out here?
But don't we need to add also what he says in verse 9, in primary personal application?
Yeah. Say more about that.
Well, I mean, he's saying, he's talking to his disciples, use what you have, your resources, not to just add to your portfolio, but to use it to build relationships that hopefully will lead people to the Lord, and to invest what you have, because what's really important is eternity, just not the here and now.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm just not putting us in the position of the steward in that sense, right? You know, Jeff, you asked the question before about the children of the light versus like the children of this generation. Like, I think that's a lesson. I read this, and you know, again, I don't want to overly extend. It's a parable, not an allegory, right? But this is sort of like, you know, to me, an explanation of why Jesus works the way he does. So, in other words, would any of us have come to a Savior who didn't show up like this? You know, didn't Jesus come and empty himself, right, and make himself nothing, and live amongst the sinners and the prostitutes and the tax collectors? You know, he's winking at the debts in a sense, right? And if he had not done that, if he had not winked at the debts and made friends with sinners, would this still be the Savior that we found love? Or would we, would the children of this age, you know, feel less comfortable with another sort of Savior who just gave us the moralistic kind of do the right thing and achieve your eternal life by effort?
I agree with the line in The Chosen where Peter said, "What's with all these parables? Can't he just answer the question?"
Well, like I said, this one is probably the hardest. So y'all did good work tonight, digging into it as deeply as we did. But, like I said, I think, you know, something this original, right, probably wasn't dreamed of. And maybe Jesus was trying to give us something that's that revolutionary, explosive. The Pharisees, or you know, some later sort of like co-opter of the Christian faith, you know, they couldn't have done it. This is too profound. Put yourself as, you know, the Savior of the world. That kind of really provocative. So.
I'm just feeling like when I read it, since I really couldn't understand it, that I did not make any judgment on anybody. That's why I read it, didn't really honestly know what to do with it, but I didn't judge anybody. And it's God's word.
Yeah. By the way, one of the theologians I really love, a guy named Karl Barth, he does something very similar with the parable we just read, which is the prodigal son, right? Where he actually maps Jesus onto the journey of the prodigal son in the fact that he, you know, his sort of like emptying of himself, Philippians 2, is to go where the son does. Right? So he doesn't just meet him back at the kind of like place where the son pulls himself up by his bootstraps and comes home, right? Jesus goes all the way there, right? And in that sense, both these lessons are something like the fact that grace doesn't enter into the world through our own respectability, right? But it's actually contrasting, in a sense, right, the way that God divests himself of his own reputation, right? His own disreputability is contrasted with our human aspirations for right? And that's a consistent theme throughout all these, right?
So I've decided that I'm going to stick with mathematics and parabolas instead.
Well, if I could build on that a second, is it okay to go to sleep at night saying some things are unknown and unknowable, and
Oh, yeah.
I'll still sleep comfortably knowing that?
Oh, yeah.
That,
Oh, yeah.
is this a hurdle that we have to get over and then have to achieve 100% before we can go on to the second grade?
You have to have faith.
It's the opposite, man. You got to become like first graders, right? You know what Jesus says.
Exactly. The parables that the guys use it to make a point to the people, and the usual Jesus, not this one, he used to meet people, or we remember the time when the Sadducees tried, the Sadducees were really proud that they accepted the book of the Bible, Jesus said about the resurrection. When he said it, so he put forward the book of, they accepted the book of Exodus 3:14. So God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not the God of the dead, of the living. So try and meet them, because if you go to like Isaiah, one of the prophets, they don't accept that book. So Jesus used whatever they knew to explain to them, you know, and they use like the field metaphor, like in Luke 17, and the agriculture metaphor. So usually meet the people wherever their expertise or Matthew maybe will lose a number. So someone has to make a point, but you know, you can go by different.
Oh, by the way, I forgot. The third parable I was going to relate this to is the parable of the laborers in the vineyard, right? And it's the same sort of thing, right? Everyone's like, I worked for 12 hours, I worked for 8 hours, you all pay this. And you just notice Jesus has the same motif in so many parables, is that the quote unquote villains are actually the ones who are like pointing to the ledgers. You know, like, I've crunched the numbers. Like, this is what I deserve.
Thank you very much. Notice nobody fell asleep tonight.
No.
Busy thinking.
Some of you go home with a bit of uncertainty, but parables were designed to make us think. If he spelled it out 1, 2, 3, we'd say, okay, got it. Forces us to grapple with it, because we like mysteries, we watch them on television all the time. So sometimes it's problematic in order to force us to think and pray and look it out.
I wonder if the disciples had these conversations among themselves.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
This guy's very close. I don't think